Welcome to the Best Business Podcast, the podcast for established marketers, entrepreneurs, and CEOs, the ones who want to join me in my mission to create 200 new multi-millionaires who solve world problems with entrepreneurship. If that's you, then this podcast was created to give you access to the tools, training, strategies, and tactics you need to achieve multiple seven-figure profits as soon as possible. This world needs the best business you can build, so please get ready, open your mind, believe you can do this, and let's build a better world together for future generations. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we're joined by Mitch Russo. And today's going to be a great call. You're definitely going to want to take notes, maybe even listen to this call a couple of times, because Mitch has quite the background and quite the list of credentials. So first of all, he's had a long career in business and success in business, and I'm sure he's got a couple of failures, and we can talk about that in a minute. But he built and sold what was at the time the world's largest time tracking software firm. And then after that, when he got finished with that, he was chief operating officer for a company called Sage with a division of over 300 people and a market cap of over $100 million. He's twice been nominated for Inc. magazine's Entrepreneur of the Year. Once he beat 4,000 people to win the title of Best Entrepreneur in '89 by the National Association of Legal Vendors. He worked very closely with Chet Holmes and Tony Robbins as president and CEO of a company called Business Breakthroughs. And Business Breakthroughs, which if you can't tell from the name, basically they provide thousands of businesses a year with coaching, consulting, training services. And he's also releasing a book next year on transitioning a traditional brick and mortar company into a fully virtual organization. And today he's here to help tell us a little bit about himself and his journey and how he can help us achieve our business goals. So Mitch, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure talking to you. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Daryl. Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. I actually sometimes forget all the stuff on my resume. That's how old I really am.
Yeah, well, I think as entrepreneurs, we always focus on like what's next. What's like, yeah, I did that yesterday, but what did I do today? And
Exactly.
To be fair, there is something that I did leave out. You're also just an amazing human being. Like we've talked. And, just people will tell by the tone of your voice, you're just a really compassionate person, very caring, and you're just really easy to talk to. You're very open with information. There's none of that nonsense that you get with some people. You know what I mean? Like there's none of that pretentiousness or any of that. And that's something I really love about you, because to me, it exemplifies you're a successful businessman. And to me, I say with a lot of friends, I feel like business is somewhat Shakespearean, where people often fall victim to their flaws. So it's, running a business and being involved in a business you have to be into personal development because of that. And I just feel like you seem like a really well-rounded person and you carry yourself so well. And so, that's not in the intro, but that's something I think should be said, because sometimes that stuff can mean more than a track record, I think.
Well, thank you, Daryl. That's really sweet of you to say. I very much appreciate your comments. And I think that comes from the way I was raised, of course, but it comes a lot from the mentors that I've had in this life. I mean, the people that you surround yourself are basically who shape you. And I've had some of the most incredible people around me helping to shape me as a human being. And, I can only be grateful now that we're sort of on the cusp of Thanksgiving here. You start to say thanks to to the people in your life and to the universe for bringing them to you. And so that's where I am today. I'm in that place of gratitude, and your comment just reinforced that. So thank you.
No, thank you. It's always an honor to talk. So how did you get started in all this? What happened? I mean, the mentors, the people you met, tell us that story. I mean, how did you even get started?
Well, it's so funny because you never know what life is going to bring you, and your sometimes modest beginnings were really the true beginning of your adulthood and your business career. Mine started as lead guitar player in a rock band. And in high school, I loved playing the guitar, but I had a motive here. My motive was that I was really shy and I never really was very good with the girls. And I figured that if I played in a band, I could probably get more dates.
Very honest. Hey, that's how I got my marketing skills, trying to film on Friday nights.
Exactly. So I mean, look, you got to be motivated by something, right?
That's right. That's right.
So one of the things I did was once we had a band, We had to practice, of course. But once we were good, we had to book ourselves and we had to get booked. And the only way to do that was to go out there and sell the band. Right. And everybody else was kind of too stoned to do that. So I volunteered. And I went out there and I booked us in some unbelievable venues. Now, remember, I was 16 years old and we played for the National Democratic Committee meeting in New York City as one of our gigs. So we were able to get into some amazing places. And at 16 years old, we were booking in at $500 a night for the band. Now, I don't know in today's dollars what that amounts to, but it's a lot. And so
especially when you're 16.
Exactly.
To play some music? What? I can get paid for this?
Exactly. I know. So, I mean, we had some expenses and all, like we had to pay the driver. We're too young to drive, so we had to pay the driver and rent a van. But, what the heck? So the thing is that, and I really did learn a lot in that experience being a rock lead guitar player. But the best part, I think, was that as I grew up and I started to really get the feel for what it is like to be an entrepreneur, I decided early on that I wanted to be successful. And it was a decision I made watching my mom, actually, after my dad and her divorced. And she struggled. I mean, we lived a nice lower middle class life growing up in Brooklyn, New York. But after the divorce, she really struggled. And my sister and I made a decision that we were going to do something about that and just never be poor. That was our decision. And the way we went about it was completely different. She became a clerk and judge for the New York State Supreme Court, and I went on to start a company. And so we took different paths, but we both knew that we had to be successful. That was in our DNA at that point. So I went out and I went to school for electrical engineering, and I loved it. I was just such a geek, you have no idea. I took everything apart. But I was lucky enough to work with some of the pioneers in the computer industry back many years ago. And it wasn't so much that I learned how to, build circuits or design circuits. I learned how the leaders in this industry thought. And that thinking has served me well all throughout my life. So as I went through and as I got older and as I got better at what I was doing, and I became an engineer, I also realized that engineering, the actual part of engineering, was only about 10 or 15% of the job. The rest of it was related more to, all the paperwork related to that. And I didn't like it. So I decided that I was going to move on, and I went and started to do some real estate investing. And I started to build a small portfolio of properties in Boston, Mass. And at that point, I saw that, it's unlimited. You could be anything you want to be as long as you are willing to work. And I don't mean work at the supermarket. I mean work at being an entrepreneur. And that means having a sharp eye for opportunity. And when you see an opportunity, you go for it. And I think that in my life, I just was lucky to have been blessed with the type of confidence that led me to not stop. So when I saw an opportunity, I just went after it, and I didn't stop and decide, well, this isn't for me. I just said, that thought in many ways never entered my mind. Later I started a software company, and let me tell you, there was a lot of people starting software companies back then, but I didn't care. I had an idea that I believed in, and I was going to run with it. And my partner and I, we basically put $5,000 in the bank, and we ran with it, and we ran hard. And we had no investors. We had no one paying our salaries. In fact, we had no salaries for years. But we believed in what we were doing. We believed in our product. We believed in our marketplace, and we believed in ourselves. And I think that is probably more than anything, one of the things that got me through all of this. I'm sure you've had moments like that too. You just got to believe in yourself.
I agree wholeheartedly because if even the belief in yourself, like if you get overwhelmed that with the trouble you're facing now, like if you get too into the rug, then you're lost, right? You have to keep that bigger picture. And it really helps, like you said, to have mentors and other people or some motivating factor to keep you moving forward, whether it's understanding someone else's story and recognizing that compared to them, you've got nothing to complain about, or whether you've got a history or a background, something that drives and motivates you. I was just reading last night the Success System That Never Fails by William Clement Stone, and there's a wonderful quote in there saying that it was inspired dissatisfaction is what gets us to accomplish things. What was it? I think I can just grab it. Hold on a second. The road to success starts when you are inspired to make effort. Inspiration starts when you are motivated to dissatisfaction with things the way they are. Therefore, inspirational dissatisfaction is the strongest single force in your success. To be dissatisfied, you must want something, like what you were saying. You wanted to never be poor, right? And if you want something bad enough, you'll do something, you'll try to get it. And it just it went on. I'm going to read all of it, but it's that inspired dissatisfaction. If you're just slightly content, then that's fine. But if you have people that, why can't I be as successful as them? Or again, something that you're trying to stay away from. I think you're right. You just have to persevere and go through that. And too often people, they just give up, too easily.
That's right. That's right. You know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, right?
Yes.
So I love what Gary says. Gary says that we all have the capacity to work a second full-time job. He says, all you got to do is work half a day. All you got to do is work half a day on your business, and you can spend the other half a day going to work while you're building your business. So I thought about that, and I said, well, what does he mean? And he continued to speak, and he said, half a day, 12 hours. So instead of coming home and watching another episode of MASH or any other sort of time-wasting stuff you do, kiss the kids goodnight, put them into bed, kiss your wife and say, I'll see you in the morning, and go back into your office and get to work.
Yep.
You can build the business at night, on the weekends, and if you have to, you'll do whatever it takes. See, that's the difference. A true entrepreneur will do whatever it takes to be successful. Whereas, unfortunately, so many of us, and I'm included, sometimes I get the feeling like I want to just give up. Mm-hmm. But you got to fight that feeling. That's not going to serve you. That feeling is your subconscious mind trying to derail you and keep you safe. And by being safe, that means not taking a risk.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And that's a great quote. It reminds me of just something that when I was talking with my dad once, he was talking about, we were driving and he said something in passing, and he said, I was like, oh, well, we're just a bunch of monkeys. I'm like, oh, we're just a bunch of people. And he's like, well, we're also part tree. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, think about it. Like, we lay roots. And the other thing is that what we focus on grows, because plants just sit there and they wait for sunlight, nutrients, and water. And then they grow as soon as they have it. They just once they get those things, they grow. And as humans, anything we focus on and we put like our energy, our focus and attention, if you've got, the skill set, the mindset, and the environment to support it, we just grow in whatever direction. So we said coming home, right, just shut the TV off, because if you spend an hour a day watching your favorite show, your knowledge in that show grows while other areas of your life remain stagnant. And a lot of people have the theory in life that you're either growing or dying, that there's no middle ground, right? That there's no real stagnation. The sun never really hangs out anywhere in the sky. It's constantly moving. Right. So I think that's a great quote. There's no reason why you can't. There's so many hours in the day, and the failure to say that you have time just means that it's just not a priority, or you don't have control of your time in your life.
That's right. That's right. So it's a matter of deciding that you're not going to be comfortable. Comfort is the enemy of success.
Yeah, nothing feels like success. So, Mitch, what were some of the greatest challenges in your business career, and how did you overcome them?
Well, it's funny. We're talking about some of that now, so this will lead into this story. Once I started Timeslips Corporation, we were entering the legal market. And if you've ever known anybody who's marketed into the legal market to attorneys, I hear that it's supposed to be one of the hardest markets of all to crack. Now, I didn't know this, and it's a good thing I didn't. People say that if anyone ever told you how hard it is to start a business, you wouldn't have done it.
That's right.
So I'm at this point, I had this idea for a time tracking tool on the PC that was based on a little program that used to be called a pop-up, where you'd hit a Alt-Shift type of combination and a screen would pop up and you could enter data or do something in that screen. That was called a pop-up. So we built an entire time tracking tool in a pop-up, and we made the prediction, maybe stupidly so because we didn't have any research, but we made the prediction that people would start to use computers more than they are now. And this goes back to 1985. And my prediction was that lawyers would actually move the computer to their desk and want to use their own computer directly instead of having them in the back office, which is what the whole industry has been built on, having them in the back office. So I said, no, they're migrating to the front office, and I want to be the first guy to help attorneys and accountants keep track of their time with a live timer right on their screen.
Right.
And we priced the program at $99, which was almost making it insanely cheap, and almost took credibility away from it because it was just so cheap. And then the greatest challenge of my career was when the American Business Association tried to discredit our product. And when I called to find out why, they told me because I was not ABA certified.
What?
Well, at that time, they were certifying our time and billing software. So I asked them, well, what does it take to get certified? And they said, very, very nonchalantly, they said, well, you just pay us $46,000 and we'll certify you. So I was being shaken down by the Chicago Mafia called the ABA.
Yeah.
And I said, you know something? I'm going to let the market decide. So you could shove that offer right up where you know.
Yeah.
And at that point, I actually told my clients in a newsletter what was going on. And I said, let's fight the ABA together. Let's spread the word about time slips, and let's get this software into the hands of every attorney we can. And let's show the ABA who has the number one product. And 18 months later, after almost being shut down by this negative publicity by a very powerful organization, they invited me to be the keynote speaker at their convention.
Really? That's awesome.
I know.
Awesome. I've loved that. I've done so much in my life just in spite of others. What do you mean I can't do this? Really? Let me show you.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And I want to go back to one other point early in my life. I told you I was an engineer, and I made a transition to being a field engineer. And then I made a transition to wanting to be a salesman. And so I went over to the head of sales, and I said to the guy, and I had enormous respect for him. He was very wealthy, very successful. And I said, Bill, I want to ask you a question. I'm thinking of moving from engineering to sales. I feel like I'm good with people, and I have an advantage over other salespeople because I really know the products. And he laughed that condescending laugh. Well, I got to tell you something, Mitch. You're a great marketing field engineer, but great salespeople are born, and it's just not you. And I stood up, and I had 3 words in my mind as I turned around and left that room. And those 3 words were, I'll show you. And it was completely instinctual. I didn't think about it. I didn't know. That was what my mind gave me back. I'll show you. And I had a new motivation at that point. And 10 years later, after I sold my company for $10 million, I pulled up in front of his building in my brand new BMW, and I sat there and I waited. And I waited for him to come out of the building. And this is probably immature and spiteful in some ways. But, I just needed to put some closure on this cycle. I waited for him to come out, and all I did was stand there leaning on my car, smiling, waiting for him to come out. And he came over and gave me a big hug and told me he'd heard all about my success and was very proud of me. So, something? Sometimes you take your motivation where it comes. And for me, that day, that moment became, for 10 years, what motivated me to be successful.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it goes back to that being dissatisfied. You were dissatisfied with his opinion of you. And he was trying to impose a limiting belief on you. And it fueled you to prove them different, because exactly that. You didn't want to be the engineer, and you didn't want to have to go back, again, to what you felt where you were coming from, poverty. And so, you fought and you stood up and you rose above it. That is awesome. And sometimes we all want that. I have a mentor, he calls that FU money. And
that's right.
And it's a powerful thing. There's it really is a powerful thing. I know I called a few people up just to not rub it in their face, but just be like, "Hey man, how you doing? How's it going?" Because just not to be a bad person at all, but again, it's walking into your ideal person. It's trying to see yourself as who you are, and then part of that, unfortunately, is outside, like having other people recognize it as well.
Yep, that's true. It's like stepping into your power, in a sense. Yep. You know what? We all are in the business of self-debasement to some degree. We all, if anyone ever spoke to us the way we speak to ourselves, we would have them arrested. Yep. And it's that self-talk that we have to be so careful of, because that's the stuff that really knocks entrepreneurs down. And you got to listen for it, and you got to respond to it when you hear it, and you got to put an end to it, because it's not serving you. And the only thing that really serves you is your belief and your determination to be successful. No one can take that away from you. And by the way, people will try.
Yeah. It was shocking for me in my career, just people that I would have never expected. Just money does weird things to people. And even people I would have never, ever in my life have had any concern about. You just never know. But that's part of it, I think. And it's part of the journey as well, right? Because, really, at the end of the day, what is it? There was an article in a Canadian magazine, Maclean's, that, they did some study, and it was like, money does make you happier up to about $150,000 a year. And after that, it's kind of diminishing return on investment. I don't know if you can speak to that. Now, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't complain about having multiple millions in the bank account. But, at some point, it's more about the journey. It's more about a contribution to the world, about creating a legacy, about seeing what you're capable of, about helping others, about just giving this life all you've got. What do you think about that?
Well, honestly, it is a measuring stick, money, and it is something that without the desire to right. pursue it, you're not gonna want it.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if I would say that, there's a certain amount of money. See, I remember, and I'll tell you a funny story about that. I remember just after I sold my company, I was invited to a party at my new boss's house. And he had a beautiful, beautiful $8 million mansion in Dallas. And I'm standing around with my then pregnant wife, and we're chatting among the guests, and we just happened to be standing by this group of people, and they invite us into the conversation, and they're trying to decide whether to get the G4 or the G5 Gulfstream, because after all, there is a difference. I don't exactly remember what they are, but and all of a sudden I felt so poor.
Yeah, no kidding.
They're now talking about their ski house in Aspen, and they're talking about their yacht and their big motorhome in the garage, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, I guess there's more to go,
Yep.
But
No, you bring up a good point, and it's what you said at the beginning, that about who you surround yourself with. They set your benchmarks.
Yep. Exactly.
So do you have any advice for anyone who's maybe listening to this and they're just like, what, 6 figures a year? What, millions of dollars? Like, that just seems so far for them. If they're struggling or starting out, or they've already got an existing business, but they're just going through a dip right now, what would you recommend to them?
Let's address each of those separately, okay? Because I think they're different problems. So if you said to me, Mitch, I got a business that's struggling right now. We're in the middle of some sort of a dip here, and I don't know what to do. So, Daryl, I think you probably know better than anybody. What you got to do is you got to go out and sell.
Yep.
There's just no excuse. There's nothing else. You can pray to the gods. You can
rain dances. Yep.
You could read 17 books, but until you pick up the phone and start making phone calls, it's not going to make a hoot of a difference.
Yep.
So if you are sitting there and you're in a slump and you're listening to this, then just press the stop button on your iPhone and instead start calling clients.
Yep.
And you, even if it's clients that let's say you are in a one-time sale type of a business. Maybe you sell swimming pools. You're certainly not going to sell a second swimming pool, right? So what you do is you call them and say things like, how's that swimming pool working out for you? Oh, great. We love it. The family loves it. Great. I was thinking of stopping by the neighborhood and wondered if you could recommend that I drop into some of your neighbors. Can you give me their names? And maybe if you could call in advance and tell them how much you like the pool, I'd really appreciate that. So what I'm really saying here is go get some testimonials from happy clients if you don't think that they'd buy from you again. That's the best thing of all. And by the way, if they're going to do that, say, would you mind if I swing by and just pull out my iPhone and record that as a short video? Because every time somebody is willing to say something nice about you, if you could figure out a way to get a video or an audio of it, the printed word is great, but I could make up testimonials. I wouldn't, of course, but I could. Anybody could. But it's hard to make up a video and audio, and that's why it has more credibility. And that's really what this is about. So if you're in a slump, go sell. That's the bottom line. If you are about to start something new, then I want you to think about where you're at as a gift. You have the gift, excuse me, of the beginner's mindset. And I want to make a point here, and this is important. No true innovation ever came from inside an industry. It always comes from the outside of an industry. And what I mean by that is we completely upset the entire time and billing market, but yet we weren't lawyers. We weren't even software developers. We weren't anywhere near accountants or knew or understood accounting software. Yet we became the number one product in that business because we were able to look at it with fresh eyes. And that beginner's mindset is a gift that you only have for a short period of time. And you better use it, and you better use it quick. Because unfortunately, you'll be assimilated. You'll be the Borg. You'll be assimilated very quickly here because all of a sudden you'll be in the industry and then you'll start agreeing with everybody else. So before you begin agreeing, have that beginner's mindset, really strike out and understand what your true gifts are here. That's part of it.
That is great wisdom. And I know you said you wanted to kind of segment out the people starting out, but I think even if you have an existing business, I know that once you're in your business for a certain period of time, it's really hard to imagine what it would be to be like a customer who's never met you, doesn't know you, that just experiences or walks into your store or your place of business for the first time. I know someone that's what they do as a consultant. That's literally what they do is they work with spas mostly, and they literally just take the owner with them, and they basically like secret shop, but with the owner. Do you know what I mean? To like walk them through it. And so I think what you said, I think that's just such great wisdom, whether you're starting out or even if you've already been in a business. Again, another friend of mine, Richard Tripp, his company, what they do is they basically try to find the 80-20 of your customer base, because so many businesses, they got, all right, you're engaged in business, you've got hundreds of customers, maybe even thousands, but who are the most valuable customers and how can you optimize to them? So I think what you said is just really, really wise, because once you're in something too long, you're too close to it. So people who are new to it, they actually have an advantage because they can take a look at it from an objective point of view, and they can look at other industries and just see what's wrong with it. And oftentimes figuring out what the negative reviews are is a great place to start when you're doing your competitive research. I know people that are looking to write books or something like that, they look at all their competitors' books and read the negative reviews, and
exactly
great insight onto what the gap is. And it's not that their competitors' books are bad. It's just nothing's perfect.
You're so true. That's so true. I just did that. In fact, when I went through, there's only two other books that I know of that address what my topic is, which is what I wrote about. And the last thing I did before I sent my book off for final editing and publishing was I went online and I read all the negative reviews of the two other books that are somewhat in my space. And then I went back to my own manuscript, and I made sure I covered all those points. Yeah. So you're absolutely right.
Yep. No, that's awesome. You said it first, so it was great wisdom. Are there any books that you recommend? I mean, you've worked with some powerful people, so I mean, what are your top kind of couple of books that you would recommend to someone that's, again, trying to make their way and make multi-millions in business?
Okay, I'm going to recommend a book that no one's ever heard of, and that recently has made a very big impression on me. I'm going to recommend two books.
Sure.
The first book is called You Too Can Be Prosperous by Robert Russell. And if you go back and take a look at when this book was printed, I think the first printing was 1905, I believe. It was 1950. And this book is a treasure trove of wisdom. And all I could tell you is that when I read this book, I felt like I was exposed to truth about the mindset of money and what drives us as people. And this was really, really wonderful to me and important to me. And it was something that I could highly recommend to others. So I wanted to make sure that that's on your short list. And it's a short book, but let me tell you, read it slowly and really, really take it in.
And so that's You Too Can Be Prosperous by Robert Russell?
Exactly.
Got it.
It's a simple book. It's in the same category as The Richest Man in Babylon. You know, it's one of these foundational books that really, really help you get into a wealth mindset. And wealth does not really come to people unless they're in that mindset. Unless, of course, it's an accident, like, somebody died and left you a ton of bucks. But for the most part, if you're going to be wealthy, you're going to need to work at it, but you're going to have to overcome the limitations of your unconscious mind. And in this case, some of those limitations can be pretty severe, which is why most of the world lives in poverty. So by overcoming those things and freeing yourself, giving yourself almost permission, if you will, to go out there and become wealthy and successful, that's really the first step. And that's what I believe is what I certainly needed to do when I first got started. I didn't use this book at the time. I didn't know about it, but I took the Dale Carnegie course. That was my way of really connecting with the success of another. And I said before about mentors, your mentors don't have to be live people sometimes. They could be programs, they could be authors. Jay Abraham was my greatest mentor for years.
Really?
I went to his conferences. I sat at his feet and wrote notes for hours and hours. And I'll tell you the truth, he's now a friend. We met several times. I even hired Jay once to write a campaign for me. And we met for the first time in 2009, and he remembered me. And ever since, we've been friends. And it's been an incredible friendship, and he's an unbelievable individual, someone with a unique gift. And I still study his works like I did from day one.
That's awesome. But you just said you for years you were following him, and he didn't really know. He might have known who you were, but you hadn't made that connection. I think that's really powerful, and that's something that I can speak to that because I myself, early in my career, I lived in a small town in Canada, and nobody else around me knew what I was into. Canada is not as entrepreneurial as the States by any means. In the town I lived in, it used to be the capital of Canada. It also used to be the penitentiary capital of Canada, and there's 2 universities and a college in that town. So it's an institutional town. Everyone goes there to get a job and work for the government or, some large institution. So I was so isolated in that I literally just would be plugged into podcasts like this, my nose in books. And technology was my best friend because over Facebook, I would seek out people like you, and I would just befriend you and, hey, ask questions and, just strike up a conversation and just make friends. And that, just like you said, you don't necessarily need to know the people. You can use you can just imagine what would I do, if, who's someone I'm trying to think of? Dale Carnegie is a great example. What would he do in this scenario, and just tap into that. And that's something I can speak to that from personal experience that changed my life is if I didn't have 5 people around me, I cut off ties, not in a cruel way, but it was like, nah, it's all right. I don't really feel like getting drunk Friday night. I got other things to do, and instead I would be, just plugged in and hammering away. And It's just really reaffirming to hear you say that, because obviously with your credentials, which you've accomplished, success leaves clues for a lot of people. They've heard it, but you just got to hear it again and again to really get it drilled through your skull, right? So
True. And the other point I wanted to make is that when I started my software company in 1985. I didn't know anything about the software business, but there was another software company that was right down the street from us, about 20 miles away, called Lotus Development Corporation. And they were the inventors of the spreadsheet, Lotus 123. So I picked up the phone and I called the front desk and I said, "Can I please speak to the vice president of marketing?" And they said, "Who's calling?" And I said, "Mitch Russo, that's who's calling." And she, for some reason, just decided to connect me. And I got the guy on the phone and I said, "Hey, my name is Mitch and I'm starting a software company. And I frankly don't know much about the software industry at all. Can I buy you lunch and tell you a little bit about what I'm doing and maybe get some advice from you?" Well, this was a guy I would have never had access to, and I probably would have never even figured out how to find him. I didn't even know his name when I called. But yet at this time, he was willing to talk to me, willing to have lunch with me, willing to give me some advice that helped me quite a bit at the time. And we stayed friends for several years after that. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone, or these days send an email and introduce yourself. And not a casual email, but a serious email. "Hey, I really would love to get to know you, and maybe if you have a few minutes, I'd love to get your feedback on something I'm working on." And let me tell you, a simple question like that, no matter how important the individual is, could open doors for you.
Yeah, no, hands down. And an important note to make on that is be of value in that first attempt and in that relationship. Like, you were going to buy him lunch, and in some ways he must have felt, like everybody wants to be recognized for for who they've done. So he must have made him feel good to be like, because he's working so hard trying to help his company be successful, to have someone just call him out of the blue and be like, "Hey, I really need, I know that you're a great man and you've accomplished, or you're accomplishing great things, can I buy you lunch?" That's, you're paying him psychic income, and it's not, you weren't paying him physical income, but you're paying him also with the food, and so you're really delivering value to him. And so for the listeners, just because I get this sometimes, people call and like I don't even know who they are, nothing about them, and they're just lots of asking. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's just lots of like want, and I feel for them and I help the people I can. But it's really important that if you want to be well received, especially if someone has a very busy schedule, that you find a way to contribute value and be valuable to that person. I just think that's a really important point to make, because that's, again, more great wisdom. Mitch, what was the second book that you were going to recommend?
Okay, well, the second book is a book that I just love to read. I've read it several times, and it's the sort of thing that, we all read a lot of business books, but one of my favorite books in the world is called Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah.
And, some people say, "Well, I'm not reading a 950-page book." And all I could tell you is that I was so sorry that this book had to end. It was one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. The lessons in this book they leap off the page. I mean, the life lessons, the business lessons, the spiritual lessons, the lessons about what it takes to be a successful human being, and maybe even more so. I mean, even a superhuman being in some ways. But it's also a love story. And it shows how the tenderness of another human being can have an enormous impact on others. So it's a sort of book that has so many messages that I just felt like reading it once wasn't enough.
I know that. Yeah, that's Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. It's on my shelf. I'm like just starting into that. It is a big, long book. I'm going to have to pick that up again. For people listening to this call, just so they know, anytime I'm on an interview with someone and they recommend these books, because I'm asking, I actually buy them. Like during the, like I just bought, you too can be prosperous. Atlas Shrugged, I'm looking at it right now. I feel like an idiot that I haven't finished reading it, because I've been recommended a few times before. And even if you're like, I know you're busy, you know the stuff, there's a great quote by Jim Rohn, the book you don't, or was it? The book you don't own, you can't read, and the book you don't read can't help you. And I mean, I'm looking at Atlas Shrugged right now, and it's $1.66 cents on Amazon. I mean, just there's no excuse why you aren't building your library. And getting these things like right now, unless you're driving, of course, keep your eyes on the road. But great suggestion. I'm going to go back to that book. It was good. It was just, it's a big book.
It is a big book. And in fact, I had it for years before I read it too. But what changed my mind about it was the references to it in 2008 when the stock market crashed. Everyone says, "Oh, it's Atlas Shrugged," and I'm thinking, why are people mentioning this now? So even though I had it on my shelf and hadn't read it, that was the incentive that I used to actually download it on my Kindle. And now I could carry it through an airport without needing a separate bag. It's pretty big.
Yeah, but again, I mean, been fortunate enough. I went to a conference once, and I remember there was the guru. They had quotes on the wall, and one was like, "If you want to be broke, hang around 9 broke people." And I was like, "Forget that. I want to be rich. I want to meet 9 millionaires." So I met a goal that I was going to meet 9 millionaires in over the next 12 months, and I met more than that. And this book comes up on a lot of people's lists. So
Yep.
Yeah, and I love the old wisdom is great. Like the "you too can be prosperous." It's you said 1950. That's a great one. I had someone recommend to me "Every Man a Winner," and that, like, the copyright on that is like 1906 or something, like 1916, and that was a phenomenal book. And there's just wisdom is wisdom. So
That's right.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite quotes? I've been dropping quotes here. Is there anything that motivates you or inspires you that you like and carry forth?
I've had one quote that has inspired me for several years, and I haven't changed it because it means so much to me. And it's by Steve Jobs. And I'll read it to you. "Your time is limited, so don't waste it by living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and your intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary."
That's a great quote. I love Steve Jobs. What a great man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So now, in having trained and coached and mentored so many business owners and created programs to help them, what are the greatest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making? Is there like a top 5, or is there some sort of what are the big ones that you see people making over and over that really hold them back?
Well, I'll give you a few general ones and then some specific ones. So most people are about ready, fire, aim. Most people just go off half-cocked. They're unprepared. They fail, and then they feel like a loser or feel like a failure, and that becomes sort of a rope around their neck for the next time, a weight around their neck for the next time they go and try and be successful again. So it would be really, really good if you prepared before you leapt into the waters of entrepreneurism. And so let me give an example. I was approached by a very enthusiastic young team that was raising money. And I asked them a lot of questions because I was very interested in what they were offering. But what it came down to for me is that none of them were prepared to be entrepreneurs. So what does that mean? Well, they wanted to work like they were working for a company, not like they were working for themselves. They wanted to get a salary at the same rate that they were making at their engineering jobs. They wanted to have a posh office or a fancy office. They wanted to work hours like they would work if they were working for a company. And I said to myself, you know what? No matter how great their idea is, there's just no way that I'm going to be compatible with these folks, because I'm going to say, hey, forget your salary. You're going to work for nothing until you prove your concept. And if you don't have enough money in the bank to do it, well, fine, save some, borrow some from your mom, find another way. But don't come to me as an investor and say to me, oh, I have this great idea and I want you to invest. And by the way, can you pay me and my family what I was making before? The answer is no. So be prepared. Know your markets. You know, you can tell in 5 minutes when someone really knows and understands their market or not. I told you before that you have this moment in time when you have the mindset of a beginner. Use your beginner's mindset to learn, to be a sponge, to absorb. That's how I think you impress others and get their support. And speaking of that, the other thing that really works well, particularly when you're in a position where you need support, is to learn how to sell yourself. Learn how to sell what you're doing. So, do you mind if I you mind if I be the coach for a moment?
Go, yeah.
Okay. So here's my 5 minutes of coaching. So anybody who's listening to this call and has a business, imagine if you and I walked in, you know the story, you walk into the elevator, you have 45 seconds to tell me what you do. So most people will say, and I'll go back to my roots with time slips, say, we publish a software program in the legal space, and what it does is it lives on the user's desktop, and it keeps track of their time. And like, now I want to chew my arm off and jump out of that elevator if I'm listening to them, right?
Right,
okay.
Of course.
So what I want you to do, whoever's listening, is I'm going to give you 7 words, and I want you to write them down. So the first 3 words are, how, ... And the next 4 words are, what we do is ... Now, if you practice this, you will never, ever leave anybody bored. In fact, you'll have them asking you if you can help them, if they can get your help. So here's how it works. So if you say to me in the elevator, "So Mitch, what do you do?" You say, well, you know how lawyers have a hard time keeping track of what they do? And in fact, most of them really don't know how to do that at all. They'd much rather practice law. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. Well, what we do is we make that job super easy for business people to keep track of their time, bill their hours, and actually collect more money.
Right. That's brilliant. Yep.
45 seconds.
Yep. Okay.
So the what we do is the best possible way of conveying your message. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this and you have a product or you have something you're pitching, if you can incorporate this into your routine, then I guarantee you that people will hear you.
You're identifying a problem and then providing the solution. And I'm a firm believer, and I say this often, that a problem is a market, not a demographic, not some cool gadget, not a fad, not a trend. It's a problem that's the market. And so that's like exactly what you said there. Like, how this so and so happens. Well, this is how we fix it.
Yep.
And it's just so simple. It doesn't have to be super complicated. There's no 6 points of persuasion and how to sell ice to Eskimos. And there's just, here's the problem. Yeah. You know how you hate it when that happens? Well, we solve it, and this is how we do it.
Exactly.
So simple. So good. That's so awesome. So that's excellent. Thank you so much, Mitch. Was there anything else in that? Did I interrupt you?
No, that was just really what I wanted to say. By the way, I didn't make that up. I learned that from Barney Zick, the late Barney Zick. And I heard Barney say that live at a J. Abraham event in 1995.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have ever made any of this stuff up. I think for me, I just regurgitate the stuff that I've learned and read and, experienced as well. So, that's fine. It's pretty much yours now anyways. You've already embodied it with your company and the years you've used it. So.
Oh, yeah. And I've taught it to as many people as I can because it's clarity. It just makes things clear. And I just love that. I love being able to communicate quickly and clearly.
That's a really good point. I did an interview with a friend who has been involved in a lot of 7-figure launches, and he's been on insider circles with 8-figure business owners. And I asked him if there was a commonality. He said, yeah, their businesses are really simple.
Yep.
Because to get to that level, you can't have complex things. It's like at some point, it just things start breaking down, and so the infrastructure has to get very simple, very fast. And that's such a crazy thing. And that's even, again, I have a martial arts background. There's all sorts of new fancy techniques and things that are going out, but they only work on the beginners. And so why do you even bother with that? Like, learn the things that are going to take you all the way to the end. And I like clear communication, problem, solution. Very well said.
Thank you.
So, how about yourself? What was the best advice you ever got, or a time in your life when you were in a, I mean, I guess you said earlier in the call that you never really lacked the self-confidence, but right now, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I say, what was like the hardest challenge that you had, and what was the best advice that you got, or what was a moment in your time, a failure that you had, and then someone came out and kicked you in the butt and turned you around? Do you have one of those moments?
I do. I think we all do. And this came earlier in my life. I went to work for a a chip vendor called Mostec Corporation, and I was hired into the company, and I went to work at the local office as a field applications engineer. And I came back from a sales call one day, and the big boss was in town, and he was screaming at the top of his lungs at my boss behind a closed door. And he was just infuriated that he had hired a Jew. I'm Jewish. He said, don't you, how dare you? What's wrong with what are you, stupid? He says, well, I don't know. I thought his name is Russo. How could he be Jewish? He said, well, the giveaway is his first name. No Italian mother would name a Jewish son Mitchell. It would have to be Michael. And now at this point, like, I'm shaking. I'm like in my mid to late 20s now, and I hardly, it's like the beginning of a new career for me, really, and I just don't know what to do. I thought maybe I should quit, and I was at a point in my life, a turning point, and what I did is I went to a mentor in the industry, somebody else in the industry who also was Jewish, and I asked him, what do I do? His name was Joel Weinstein. I said, Joel, this is what happened. What do I do? And he said something to me that I never forgot, and it made a very strong impression on me, and it changed my decision. He said to me, don't let those buffoons take your job away from you. And I thought to myself, you know something? He's right. I earned this job. I'm really good at it, and I'm going to excel in this company. And just because of these small-minded baboons that are sitting there and cursing out each other because of me and because of my religion, I'm not going to let that stop me. And you know something? I had difficulty working at that company. They did not let up over the years. But the bottom line was that I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I excelled at that job, and I was motivated to do it because I wanted to prove to these guys that they did not make a mistake hiring me. I think I could have gone either way. If Joel Weinstein would have said to me, you should probably get out of there. It's a negative, toxic environment, blah, blah, blah. I might have said, yeah, you're probably right. But I'm glad he didn't. And I learned so much because of getting his help to make that decision. So once again, it comes back to having a mentor. It comes back to that fork in the road that changes your life and making the right decision, as hard as it might be.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now, sorry, I'm just thinking about that because I went through something similar to that. The common theme that keeps coming up, and just like with the story that you just said, it's just what I love about it is that it's you kind of imposing your will or your plan versus just being reactionary. If that makes, because you have to react to external forces and adapt, but you've got your North Star and you just kind of keep moving towards it. And that's the one thing, when the guy told you couldn't get at sales and all this sort of stuff, I just feel like that's the one kind of recurring theme I feel like that I've heard a lot from you in your language and your stories in this call is just how exactly that. I've already said it, just how you would impose your will or, stick to your plan as best as you could, jumping around things, but versus some people, like something happens and they get caught up in the reaction. You know what I mean? It's like playing chess. I had a turning point in playing a good friend of mine who's also very successful, and he's super he kicks my butt all the time. But I've started to win more games against him when I realized I need to stop reacting to how, like, when he would do something, I need to keep imposing my plan versus focusing on what he's doing. And I just heard that a lot in your talk, and I think that's a really important thing, that when you set a goal, it comes back to what we said at the very beginning of the call, again, the perseverance, the pig-headed determination. There's just to have the goal, and this is who I am, and this is who I want to be, and I'm going to walk into that and be that person.
I agree.
Now,
I don't think you get a choice, though. I think, the world is set up in such a way to screen out for those people who it can easily crush. And, I guess if they showed up with machine guns and started mowing down people, you can't really talk your way out of that. Although I know I'd try, I'm sure. But but the bottom line is that it's really your decision. It's your life. It's like Steve said, this is really all about the noise of others' opinions. And others' opinions are not going to control my fate, my destiny, or my life. And they shouldn't control anybody else who's listening to this phone call, because if you're listening to this call, then you're an entrepreneur. And you're out to make this world to conform to your needs. And you should.
Well said. Well said. I only have one more question for you. Well, actually, I have a second question, but I want to ask, do you have any daily habits or routines that you think have really been instrumental on your path to success?
When I was throughout my years of being on the road and selling, I had a trunk full of sales programs, lots and lots of cassette tapes. It was just really learning. And while I didn't know those people, I learned from them. I probably was I probably was getting less gas mileage in my car because I had so many cassette programs in the trunk. But seriously, it became my rolling university. I never listened to the radio. I didn't care about the radio. I love music. I am and was a musician. But ultimately, what I cared most about was learning from others and the way that they solved problems. And then as I grew up, I took that one step further. I decided that it was going to be an important thing for me to get to know as many successful, connected people as possible. And, that's why I'm delighted to have made your acquaintance because of who you are. I want to know you. I want to understand you and what you do because of your success. And I want the same with others as well, because ultimately I can't, I can only be good at, I'm an expert, but I'm an expert at only what I'm an expert at. You're an expert at what you do, and others are at what they do. So the only thing I could do is just get to know as many successful people and connect to them.
There's so much wisdom in that. It's just such a wise thing to say, because I think a common mistake that I see a lot of my clients making is they try and do everything themselves. And I just love what you said, is that you need to surround yourself with people who are experts in different things, because you can't do everything. And getting rich is a team sport. It's not a solo thing. It's not something you can do on your own. So, well, you just, again, it came out of your mouth. I'm just agreeing with you that it's exactly it. And that's why I'm doing these interviews and these calls for the people that are listening, to help connect them and allow them to be able to reach out and communicate and just have access to people, because that way they can recognize knowledge and skill versus, they have some sort of comparison. If something to compare against, if they're not reaching out to the people that I'm interviewing. So I said I had a second question for you, and that question was, is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
No, I think you covered as much as I'm, again, when people ask me questions, I never know what's going to come out of my mouth, because I don't really think it's me speaking anyway. I think it's really me channeling the wisdom of the universe through myself in a way that is uniquely me. So I never know what I'm going to say, and half the time I don't remember what I said either. So if you said to me, now, can you repeat that? I might say no, because I'm not sure I could. But I would like to tell you what I'm doing now. Do we have an extra minute so I can get it?
Of course. That was, I was going to say that. What are you doing now? What are you excited about?
Well, I got to tell you, you know how, and I'm going to use my 7 words on you. You know how possibly one of the most unsung heroes of the entrepreneurial world are coaches?
Yes.
Well, what I am doing now is I am building a program to train coaches to get rich. And to me, coaches are probably, I mean, I've depended on coaches most of my life, and I know that so many people benefit from either being a coach or being coached. I feel like it's time that we get coaches into the prosperity zone. And that's what I'm building. I'm building a program that encapsulates all of what I learned building one of the most successful and largest training and sales organizations through coaching in the business community, and that was BBI. And that's basically where I'm coming from with this program. So let me give you a URL to take a look at.
Sure.
And the program is not ready yet, so please don't buy it, even though the sales page is up. But it's called Coaching System Architect. And the reason I call the company Coaching System Architect is because that's what I am. I go in and I architect a business with a coach in a coaching environment. So if you go to coachingsystemsarchitect.com, that is my sales page. But if you follow that with /free, you can sign up and I will send you a free report, which again encapsulates years of hard-learned wisdom to get yourself out of trouble before it starts. The free report alone, if you're a new coach or if you're a coach that's struggling, will save your butt and put you on the right path. So I highly recommend that. But here's the point. A coach is all about selling their hours for dollars. It's a unfortunate trade because you can only make as many dollars as you have hours to trade. And so what I want to do is I want to show coaches how they could build a sustainable business that multiplies the dollars in their pocket without spending more hours. And that's my goal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's such a worthy cause because coaches, everybody does need a coach. I agree wholeheartedly with you on that. No one's won an Olympic gold medal. No one's won a world championship. No one's done anything very significant without some sort of coach. So I think it's a very noble cause. And that URL again is coachingsystemarchitect.com/free to get the report from Mitch, who's obviously very, very savvy and experienced and knows what he's talking about. That's awesome. Thank you so much. What's some of the stuff that's in that report?
Well, I call the report the 5 critical errors most coaching businesses make. And the reason I can say that with some authority is because I've made all those mistakes. So, and one in particular took me 2 years to figure out. So if I could encapsulate that knowledge and that learning into something and then give it away for free, then I'm thrilled to do it. And of course, in this world, the free report, it's ubiquitous to the internet. This is a little bit different because this is truly useful. This is not something that somebody grabbed off of a website. This is like me. And this is really what I believe can solve problems just in this alone. My course, which I'm in the process of finishing now, is much deeper, and it goes into all of those topics and much more. And if you were to take this course and you were not successful, then I would insist that you get a refund because that means you're not set up to be successful in your mindset. Everything in my course is designed to help help a business owner become successful by building a credible, substantial business based on sound techniques that I have myself used over and over again.
No, I fully endorse your stuff because we both come from the avenue that you have to provide value to others in order to it's about serving people and helping people. And some people, like if you put out garbage, then no one's right. Then you obviously lose the interest right away. You have to give people really good quality content, and what that does even is it saves your time because the people that are just do-it-yourselfers, the people that have simple problems to solve, they'll get that report, they'll read it, it'll change their life, and then they'll be so happy they'll recommend it to their friends and move on, right? But the people that do need the deeper hand-holding, that do need the more, that are interested, that it would be to their benefit to be more involved, they'll come to you. So no, I think that's just a great offer of you, and it's obviously again very, very worthwhile. The URL again is coachingsystemarchitect.com/free. Mitch, is there any other way people can get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out?
Sure. They can go to my website, mitchrusso.com. That's my personal website. There's probably 40 articles encapsulating the lessons that I've learned. And there's a button up top that says that you can literally, anybody who hears this call can click on that button and set up a free 20, 30-minute call with me just to chat.
Awesome. All right. Well, those of you listening that are interested, it's Mitch Russo, MITCHRUSSO.com, or go to coachingsystemarchitect.com/free. Mitch, thank you so much for your time today. I know it's valuable, and I'm very, very appreciative of it. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure, Daryl.
Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too. Take care.
You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast. And if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build. And I believe in you.